Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Menopause HQ's podcast, Hot, Tired, and Hormonal, where we have real conversations about hormones, hot flashes, and everything nobody sat us down and explained about what's going on with our bodies during this menopausal transition. And we also talk about not giving a shit. No longer do we give a shit about unrealistic expectations. We don't give a shit about trying to be everything to everybody. And we definitely don't give a shit about suffering in silence anymore. So that's what we are here to talk about. We talk about all things perimenopause, menopausal, postmenopausal, all of that. We talk about relationships. We talk about how this time of life affects work, and even in your dealings with your friends, family, and children, all of that. And we're very candid about it. So we welcome you. If this is your first time visiting with us, welcome. I am Angela. I'm the founder of Menopause HQ. We are a company that provides resources for women over 40 who are trying to understand what's really happening with their bodies during this phase of life. My co-host is Latalia, who is a nurse practitioner. She's an expert on women's hormonal health, and she gives us all the tea about what's going on in our bodies. She gives us the educational information. She gives us anecdotal information, and she even tells us what we need to do to feel better, because I know most of you out there that are listening are probably not feeling that great and want some help. And when I talk with Latalia, I share personal anecdotes as well. And I'll also ask her questions that I think you would ask. Okay. With this podcast, our goal is simple. We just want to help you ask better questions when you go into your doctor's appointments. We want to help you be educated so that you know how to advocate for yourself and fight for your own health care. Because unfortunately, as women, a lot of times we're dismissed when we go in and talk to doctors about what's going on with our bodies. And we want you to be able to be empowered and to advocate for yourself and to stop feeling like maybe you're losing your mind as all of these things are going on in your body. So here's the disclaimer. As always, everything we share here is educational. Please talk with your own healthcare provider about your specific needs, all right? We are not giving medical advice as part of this podcast, okay? Now, today's episode, y'all. Well, first of all, before I get into today's episode, I got to share with you the shirt of the day. So the shirt of the day is, let me see if you can see, it says menopause, mental pause, men on pause, but you can't pause me. All right. The reason I made this shirt is because when I was going through the throes of my symptoms of perimenopause, I I didn't care about men. It just wasn't even on my mind. So that's why I said men on pause. Cause I was just like, I didn't have any libido, no desire, no nothing. And then mental pause, we know what that means. I couldn't remember anything. Brain fog was through the roof. Anxiety was through the roof. So it's like my mind just paused. And if you go back and listen to episode 4, Latalia explains why that happens. It has to do with estrogen and the receptors in the brain not getting the estrogen that it's used to getting. So go back and watch episode 4 if you haven't watched it. All right. Now, today's episode is called Men Have Hormone Problems Too. I don't know how many of you knew that, but men have hormone problems too. Have you ever heard of andropause? Andropause. And andropause is derived from androgen, which testosterone is an androgen. And Latalia will explain all of that to you. But it's a pause of the level of androgen or testosterone that men are used to having. So we're going to talk about how what's really funny to me is even though as women, our healthcare is not studied as much, we don't get focused on as much in talking about healthcare. There's not as much research on our women health problems. But when it comes to andropause, that's one thing that I think is not talked about enough when it comes to men. We as women, we know to expect menopause at some point in your life. If you keep living and if you were born with a uterus and everything's working like it's supposed to, eventually you will enter menopause, right? I did not hear anything about andropause growing up or even in my reproductive years, and I'm not sure a lot of men really know about andropause. I think men hear about they're going to have some prostate issues as they age. I think they may hear, within talking to each other, they might hear a little bit about their testosterone dropping, but they may not realize that this is actually a thing and it's called andropause. And there's more to it than just it affects your libido. Okay. So when we talk about this, I want you to think about any men that you know in your lives that are in mid-age, in their midlife, and think about any changes that you're seeing in their behavior. And could it be andropause? It's a man's version of his hormone fluctuations. All right. So if you know any men that are acting a little different, and we're going to talk about the signs and symptoms of andropause, keep them in mind as you listen to this episode. All right. So, Latalia, let's talk about andropause. Am I right in saying that we don't talk about this as much as we do menopause?
Absolutely. I mean, one thing is every woman with a uterus that lives long enough will go through menopause, but every man may not experience andropause.
Mhm.
Exactly. Angela said testosterone is a androgen hormone. It's a primary male sex hormone. And it's not just related to sex. It is found in every tissue in the male body. It
Wow.
affects every organ system. It is produced in the testes and the adrenal glands. So let me tell you some physical benefits of testosterone that could be
Okay.
shocking and some that you may know. It
Okay.
provides muscle mass and strength, great bone density. It helps with fat distribution. It helps with energy level, sexual and reproductive health. It helps with your sex drive. So if you have low libido, that could be a sign that you have low testosterone or andropause. It helps with erectile function. It helps with sperm production, from your light cells. It helps with mood regulation and cognitive function. It gives you confidence and motivation just like it does for women. It also helps with red blood cell production. It helps with heart health. It regulates blood glucose. So if you have like insulin resistance or diabetes, it could be due to low testosterone. It also increases oxygen in the body. It also regulates cholesterol. So a lot of our men have high cholesterol levels when they age. It could be due to low testosterone. If you have a weakened immune system, like every time the weather changes, you get sick, could be due to low testosterone.
No.
And it also helps with behaviors. A lot of people associate with increased testosterone with aggression, but that's due to dominance. You're confident, you're motivated. But when you have low testosterone and you can become more irritable and you can be more angry and easily frustrated, you can be short tempered. And so you can also be territorial. So if your man don't want you to leave or go anywhere, that could also be due to low testosterone. So it has so many physical benefits for the body.
That's a lot.
Mhm.
And so let me ask you this. Do men have estrogen and do they have progesterone?
Yes, we're gonna talk about that in just a second.
Okay. All right.
Mhm,
Um, so if his testosterone levels are declining,
mhm.
what might that look like?
You can have like 21 symptoms if your testosterone levels decline. You can have depression, fatigue, like I said, low sex drive,
Wow.
irritability, loss of facial or body hairs, thinning or wrinkling skin. You can even gain weight, especially around the abdomen. You can have weakening of bone and muscle tissue, decrease in the size of your sex organ. You can have bone loss, decreased mental clarity, decreased muscle strength, decreased stamina. So if you used to get up and go and move, you can't get up and go and move like you used to. Decreased urine flow, increased abdominal fat, like I said before, increased urge to urinate, mood swings, even night sweats, poor concentration and sleep disturbances. So therefore, if men try to change careers later in life and they have a hard time getting motivated, that could also be one of the reasons, because of the low testosterone.
Wow. So one thing stuck out to me.
Mhm.
Did you say his penis could get smaller?
Yeah, yeah, decreasing the sex organ.
You said a decrease in the sex organ. I was like,
Mhm.
what? I didn't know about that at all.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because, it helps with muscle mass. Testosterone helps build,
Oh,
and men have 95% testosterone, circulating in their body. So therefore, when you decrease it to that level, it affects every organ in your body.
wow, I didn't think about that. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, I know there are some men who they've heard that testosterone levels can decrease as they age,
Mhm.
and I think, there are some men who are dreading that. But if they knew that there's a possibility that their penis could actually shrink some because of the muscle mass decreasing, I think a lot of men would probably be proactive in trying to figure
Mhm.
out what to do to keep their testosterone levels, higher.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about some natural things they can do to do that later. But um, one of the things is I think a lot of men may carry shame when these changes start to happen in their body, and if they don't understand what's going on because like us, they haven't been necessarily taught to expect that this may happen for them.
Mhm.
If they may have some shame and they don't have the language to
Right.
say, "I think something's going on with my body." And, we as women know it's hard to get a man to go to the doctor a lot of times. Men
Mhm.
don't wanna it's almost like they feel like if they bury their head in the sand, then it doesn't happen, you
Right.
know? So even talking about what's going on with their bodies can be difficult for a lot of men. And just like we don't necessarily know how to explain what's going on with us and our hormone fluctuations, he doesn't either. So now you got two people that are possibly in the same situation, and we're trying to understand each other. I'm looking at him going, he's different. He's looking at me going, she's different. And I don't really understand what's going on with me internally. He doesn't really understand what's going on with him. And so we can't communicate with each other. And that can
Mhm.
cause issues too, right?
So actually, too, instead of a lot of couples going to a divorce court, maybe they should go to the lab first. Maybe they need to check some things out because, just like you said, when women are going through menopause and men are going through andropause, symptoms show up differently in each man
Yeah.
because, according to their stress, their workload, their low motivation, and the perception of manhood. You how you were raised by your parents, your father, what's the expectations of what you're supposed to be doing as a man. That can weigh heavily. And
Yeah.
so when you get older and your testosterone has lessened, the frustration creeps in, the aggression, the irritability, the
Mhm.
depression, the low mood, so and then it's compounded by the woman who's going through menopause sometimes around the same time. You're snapping at each other. The sex life has decreased. You don't know each other anymore. And just like I'm gonna talk about that post that I read this morning that you commented on, Angela, about the men, finding good men later in life. How many men out there, and some people comment it's like it's more women than men. But also too, you can't count our brothers out too, because when you meet a man, they could be going through some of these things. And you
Mhm.
don't know they could actually be a good man, but they
Mhm.
have things that they're dealing with they don't truly understand because
Mhm.
men don't like to go to the doctor, especially our
Mhm.
black men. You
Mhm.
know, and
Mhm.
so and they don't talk about the benefits of testosterone. It's a major communicator. And that's why I'm such a big advocate for hormones because you need hormones. And just like women, men have luteinizing hormones, they have LH. It actually is a signal that stimulate the production of testosterone in your Leydig cell. And then you have FSH just like women that stimulate the production of sperm in your Sertoli cells. I like some kind of pasta.
Mhm.
But these are cells that men have, and if those are low or your FSH goes up high, it's trying to signal, it's trying to speak to those cells, and nothing is happening. So you're not producing enough testosterone from the
Mhm.
LH signaling, and you're not producing enough sperm from the FSH. So those
Mhm.
things are very important to get evaluated and addressed.
So let's talk about the ages that this starts to happen for men.
Okay.
When does the decline begin?
So it's for some, it could be even in your 30s, but 40s and 50s. And like I said, some men can still have a lot of testosterone later in life in their 50s. So every man don't go through andropause. It
Mhm.
depends on a lot of factors, lifestyle, medical health, genetics and things like that. So it's different for everyone, but I would start looking at it at age 30. I really wish what we would do as for young men, like in their 25s and 35s, when testosterone can be peaking and stuff, and sometimes younger, I wish they would get a lab level of their total testosterone and free testosterone.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they would, the
Y
best time of their life, how they feel the best. And
yeah,
when they hold that number, and so when they get older, they look at that number and say, "Okay, things are changing," so you have a reference to go to, because
right,
it's not a one number for every man, it's
right.
different for every individual. So I think that would be a great, mark for someone to say, "Oh, I feel the time of my life, I feel good, I have great libido, I have high confidence, motivation." Get your testosterone level drawn. And so when things start to
Mhm.
change for you as life moves on, stress kicks in your 30s, 35, 40s, or whatever, you can always look at this number and say, "Where's my testosterone level? Where's my free testosterone? What's available
Mhm,
to me?
mhm.
And what has changed?" And so you'll have something to go by. But now they don't do those things. So now we have to estimate, guesstimate, figure out what works for you, figure out what makes you feel good. What number is your number?
That's what we go through too,
Mhm.
because even though we may be in the normal range for our hormones, that still might not be normal for us. And
Right.
now we're playing Russian roulette trying to figure out what makes us feel what level of those hormones makes us feel the best.
Mhm.
One thing that I think is a little different for women than men is even though our hormonal fluctuations are somewhat gradual, but the fluctuations can be so drastic that now we're having the night sweats. We're having
Mhm.
the hot flashes, the mood swings, the depression, the anxiety. And I mean, it is I know for me, um, I will say in my early to mid 40s, it was more gradual. Like there would be weeks that I felt normal, and then maybe one day I was in a really bad mood, and I thought that really bad mood was because I was stressed out. Now looking back, I realized it could have been a day that my hormones were
Mhm.
fluctuating. But then when I got closer and closer to the actual menopause, that's when it's like all hell broke loose. All these weird things were happening all at once, and that's the signal that I think let me know, okay, something is really going on, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
Whereas with men, tell me if I'm wrong or right, but with men, it's more gradual
Mhm.
so that it's not necessarily all of a sudden they got depression, anxiety, mood swings, the hot flashes, and all of that stuff, and joint pain all at once,
Right.
which is what kinda happened to me when everything came to a head, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's when I went to the doctor and went, "Wait a minute, what the heck is going on?" Because all these things are happening at once. Whereas with men, I think we talked about in one of the episodes before how with women, we can say, "Well, this is just stress." Because some of the symptoms and signs that we go through, yeah, could be attributed to high stress, which
Mhm.
I don't know too many women that don't have a lot of high stress, right?
Right.
But with men, I feel like that's even easier to say that it's stress because number 1, he's not necessarily looking for andropause or thinking that that's something that could happen with him, whereas we are looking for menopause, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But number 2, it's so gradual that and it happens during a time in his life where work responsibilities might be higher, children are beginning to leave the home, his wife is going through some things that might cause him some stress, she's going through her own hormonal changes. So all of those things are happening, so he may just consider, "Well, it's just stress."
Right.
And
Mhm.
that's another reason he may not go to the doctor, which is one of the reasons I'm glad we're doing this episode,
Mhm.
because if women are listening to this, now they know to be on the lookout and they can advocate for their partner. And hopefully they can get some men in their lives to listen to this episode so they will know to look for it, right?
Mhm.
Um, I think it's interesting that I don't think either one of us, men or women, wake up one day and go, "Huh, I think my hormones have changed," right? It's not like I think we just we're going through life day in, day out, we're just kinda doing our thing, and it's not until a lot of things go haywire all at one time that we might say, "Okay, something's not right." You know,
Right.
we go get
Mhm.
checked out.
Mhm.
Um, when we are let's say we think that a man in our life is going through andropause, what can we as women do or say, to broach that subject with him? Because I think for me, because I've talked about healthcare pretty much all my life, it wouldn't be difficult for me to talk
Mhm.
about it. I'm not scared, I'm not nervous. Even if the man that I'm talking to might have some reservations about talking about it, I don't care because
Mhm.
I'm more clinical with it, right? I have this thing in my brain, even the men that I'm dating, I can switch off the sexual, salacious thoughts of sex. I can switch that off and it becomes clinical, just like that.
Mhm.
I can do
Mm.
that so easily and talk to a man that I'm dating about his body, about sex, and think about it clinically. And then when I'm in the mood, I can switch that back on, right? So
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
have that ability to do that. So I can talk to any man. I've talked to my uncle who is 82
Mhm.
about his body. We talk about sex. We talk about what he can do to help with certain things. We talk about all kinds of stuff. My mom kind of just she's just put her head down. She don't wanna talk about it, but I
Mhm.
have no problem talking about it. I do recognize, though, there are a lot of women that have a hard time talking about these things with their partner that they've been with for 30 something years. So
Mhm.
what do you suggest women say if they're listening to this episode and they're thinking, "That sounds like my man."
Mhm. Well, first of all, like you said, get educated. Like one thing about me, I constantly go to different sources. A lot of my information I did get from Dr. Weatherby. I like talking to different men to figure out because I'm not a man, so I don't know the experiences. I think experience is one of the best teachers. And so as a woman, when you listen to this podcast, for one, you definitely talk to your male counterpart and say, I've noticed that you've struggled with some of these symptoms that I heard. You help have them listen to the podcast and say, I think we just need to get some levels drawn. Just talk to them about the importance of testosterone, because
Mhm.
I think society don't stress the importance of hormones, and that's what they need to understand is very important. It's not something to. It's not like a vitamin, even though vitamins are very important is
Yeah,
is something that's significant. I mean, this influence several tissues in your body, like all of
mhm.
them,
Yeah,
in some kind of degree. So this is very important. And so we need to have the conversation to sit down and say, let me go to your doctor with you. Let's get some labs drawn. Come to me. We'll draw some labs. I'll have a conversation, with you. And if you want to talk to a male counterpart, get someone that's educated in the benefits of testosterone. It's very important. So I would just say, just sit down, stress the importance, listen to this podcast, get some lab work drawn, and just sit down and have the conversation. That's very, very important to begin with the conversation. And don't be afraid if they blow it off, then have them listen to the podcast and if they have questions afterwards, then you can be there to fill in some of that for them.
yeah, I think, some men may feel like when they feel these changes happening, they may feel like less of a man, which is a ego thing, which we all know is delicate with men,
Mhm.
right? So I think reassuring him and letting him know that, number 1, I still love you, and I think right now so much is happening in our lives at the same time. I'm going through hormonal shifts, and I heard this podcast where I found out men go through hormonal shifts. Did you know that? Did you know that you could
Mhm.
sometimes go through a hormonal shift too? And I've been noticing that your energy has been a little lower than it usually is. Sometimes I've noticed you've kind of been in a bad mood, and so have I. We both have at times. And I'm just wondering if this could be what's going on with you. Are you
Mhm.
open to us looking into this together? I'm looking into what's going on with my body. We can support each other through this, right? And I think coming at it that way, I think kind of eases into him not feeling like you're pointing fingers at him and that he's either doing something wrong or something's wrong with him or he's less of a man, so yeah, I definitely believe communication is key
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
these situations. I just think that being open and honest and, like you said, being educated, because I know for me, it's hard for me to talk about some subjects I'm not educated in, and that's why I go and become educated so that I can then talk about it, right, and feel confident in what I'm saying. Same thing in my job, I'm in sales. I don't feel good until I really know my product inside and out, and I can go out and talk about it and sell it. It's the same thing with talking to your partner about something really important, right?
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely.
what signs and symptoms do we look for, in a man that's in our life that we think might be going through this that could tell us this is possibly what's going on?
Okay, initially the physical sign, like the abdominal fat. If they have low motivation, if they're extremely tired, I can't drive long distances anymore because they're so sleepy on the road. Decreased stamina, just don't really want to do much, don't want to grow and engage and develop. Sometimes they can't sleep at night, snapping easily. So
Mhm.
some of those things you'll see the physical characteristics or territorial when they weren't before. Like if they don't want you to go out with some of your friends and they can't really explain why, that could be they don't want to be alone. So they get more territorial. And so those things you'll start to notice. And you're like, okay, something is different, and definitely could be signs of testosterone. But Angela mentioned something earlier that I do want to point to. Men have estrogen too, men have progesterone too. They don't have as much as we have, but they do have those 2 hormones. Now, I must explain something. I have to laugh. My husband always says this to me because I take progesterone, but I take 250 milligrams of progesterone. It's my calm. It helps me sleep at night. And sometimes he'll say, I'm going to get some of that progesterone because I want to sleep like you. So I laugh, but you know what? Men can take progesterone.
Oh.
Just not 250 milligrams. I would not advise to that amount. But what happens when men age? Testosterone can lower and estrogen can rise because what happens is a little enzyme in our fat tissue called aromatase. And when testosterone can aromatase and transform into estrogen by that little enzyme. Okay, so our fat can cause testosterone to aromatase or change into estrogen. So it converts a lot of your testosterone. So not the fact that you don't have any testosterone, but the belly fat has increased and then you have more estrogen. So men can have large bellies, more breast tissue because you have higher doses of estrogen in the body.
Let's talk
So,
about the belly fat
okay.
because we talk about dad bods, right?
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
little bit of the little pudge in the middle that men have or
Hmm.
beer bellies.
Hmm.
How do we kn w how do we know the difference? Because a lot of men I see in their 40s, 50s have what I consider to be a dad bod. The
Hmm.
rest of
Hmm.
their body might be a little lean for somewhat, but then they got a little pooch, right?
Right.
Is that caused by lower testosterone? Is it caused from what they eat, not exercising? What is it?
It could be both or several different factors. You have to get lab work. That's why I say I can't stress the importance of lab work. You have to get a total testosterone. And I'll explain this in a few minutes. But you have to get lab work and you have to look at estradiol levels too. Because let's say the more belly fat you have, you can have more insulin resistance. More insulin resistance, you block the effects of testosterone. Testosterone converts to estrogen. Higher
Mhm.
levels of estrogen, you can have increased risk of coronary artery disease, increased stroke risk, increase, like I said, insulin resistance, then more abdominal fat, more aromatase. So it's like a
Cycle.
constant cycle.
Yeah.
And then also too, excess testosterone and protein that helps bind up testosterone in the body is in the liver. It's produced in the liver. Excess testosterone is eliminated through the liver. What do a lot of men like to do? Like to drink.
Mhm.
So you drinking alcohol, you drinking beer, you can make the situation worse.
Yep.
Because you need a healthy liver to get rid of excess testosterone or to help. Let me explain this protein a little bit better so I won't confuse you. It's a protein called SHBG. Women and men both have it. Sex hormone binding globulin. It's produced in the liver. So when you have testosterone, it actually can bind that testosterone so it can become inactive. So with testosterone, you want to look at is the one that's free. Total testosterone can be misleading because you have a whole lot of testosterone, but not a whole lot free, then it's not available for the body to use. Because 2% of that total is usually what's free, inactive.
Mhm,
So
mm.
you also want to check that SHBG level to see if it's too high or too low. If it's too high, it could be issues with your liver. It could be undernourishment. If it's too low, it could be insulin resistance. So it's something that you can look at to see what's actually going on with that sex hormone binding globulin. Also, it could be an indicator for cancer you
Mm.
know, as well. So it's very important to get a thorough lab review of what's going on with your hormones.
Wow. Okay,
Mhm,
so if you notice that the man in your life is more withdrawn,
mhm,
doesn't have the same amount of energy, he's not as decisive as he used to be, he's mentally foggy, some of
mhm.
the same things that we go through as we're going through perimenopause. It could be andropause.
Right.
It he I know when we had our testosterone episode, we talked about how for women, testosterone can affect how we show up in the world, how we feel, our self confidence, how we feel about ourselves. I know for me, when my testosterone levels were low, I didn't feel feminine, I didn't feel sexy. And I think the same thing happens for men when their testosterone levels are low. They may
Exactly.
not feel as good about themselves. And so now that causes them to be a little more withdrawn and maybe not communicate as well as he used to or be as engaged as he used to be.
Mhm,
So hopefully, if you have noticed these things in the man in your life, you are now realizing that because I know a lot of women, first thing we do is, did I do something wrong?
mhm,
Is it me? He's withdrawing from me. Does he not want me anymore? I know I'm going through all of these changes and I can be some days I'm in a grumpy mood or I'm withdrawn too. So maybe he's reacting to me and he's pulling away because I am doing these things. It may not be that. It could very well be that he's going through his own stuff and he just doesn't
mhm,
realize it, right? So our hope is that this episode can actually make some relationships stronger because it will help you understand him and maybe help him understand himself. And then even if you get him to listen to some of the other episodes to explain
mhm,
what's going on in your body, ladies, then it can help him understand what's going on in your body. And now there's some understanding. It can open doors for communication. So hopefully that's what we're helping you all do. Now, there are a lot of similarities between menopause and andropause and the fact that if the woman is going through a lot of changes, the man's going through a lot of changes, guess what? We're both going through these changes as our children are moving out of the house, as the professional responsibilities are getting, higher. And I know Latalia talks about one of the ways you can help with all of these hormonal changes naturally is by reducing stress. But good Lord, in 2026, which is when we are taping this podcast,
yeah,
even if you could be, retired, living your quote unquote "best life," but this world and all of the things that are going on in it is stressful. The
mhm,
economy is stressful. Even if you are living your best life, I guarantee you know somebody that's having a hard time right now, and it's probably a family member or a close friend and I know for me being an empathetic person, that affects me. That affects my stress level when I see other people hurting, even though I may not be. So I know we're supposed to reduce stress, and we do the best we can. We might meditate, we might get
mhm.
massages, we might. I met a young lady recently. She's a life coach, and her question that she asks people is, "When's the last time you took a bath?" because she said a lot of people don't take baths. They hop in the shower. But
Mm.
taking a bath actually does calm your nervous system. It helps you to relax,
Okay.
it just slow down a little bit and lets your brain rest. So even taking a bath could be a way of reducing stress, right? And one of the things I noticed about me going through my menopausal journey is all of these things are interconnected. Like Latalia was talking about, drinking the alcohol could make things worse when it comes to your hormonal fluctuations. Same thing for women. So things that didn't affect us before, now that we're going through these hormonal changes, I noticed very quickly that there are things I used to be able to do that I can't do anymore because
Uh-huh.
it's affecting me differently. And it's the same for men as
Yeah.
we age. So yeah, I think hopefully this episode will help the two of you understand each other better, and there'll be less of the inclination for women to take it personally when they see these changes in the men. So again, low testosterone is less energy, lower motivation, mood changes in both women and men. The life pressure can cause mental and emotional stress in both women and men. And both of us going through this at the same time, we can support each other during this craziness, right?
Mhm.
So the impact on the relationship is the big thing that we want the women that are listening to hopefully this episode is helping you with. That's like one of the biggest things that we want to do with this episode. When you're listening to this episode, if it's helping you in any way, share it with the women in your life that you know. We women talk and we talk about, girl, my man, I don't know what's going on with him. If you've had those conversations with your friends, share this episode with them, please.
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely.
You know? So Latalia, you said you were gonna talk about, what did you say you were gonna talk about more? Just a minute ago, you were
Was
saying something.
was it like the treatment?
So yeah, let's talk about the
Okay.
treatment. Let's talk about
Okay.
what men can do to feel better during this
Okay,
time.
and also too, Imma talk about numbers because so many people are hooked on numbers, but I must say that we are just as individual as our fingerprints. So our numbers will vary between each male and female, you know. So, but one thing natural, people who are not interested in testosterone replacement, if they have low testosterone, I'm still an advocate, hormones replace hormones. I mean, you can exercise, you probably can supplement, you can boost something, but if it's super low, you may need some testosterone. So, get your vitamin D check. Minimize your blood sugar. Minimize saturated fat. Try to eat healthy fats. Try to eat vegetables and fruit. Minimize the sugary fruits. Try to eat more berries. Things like that. Decrease alcohol consumption. Laugh more. Have fun. If your mate doesn't want to go to a sporting event and you love sports, go by yourself. Find a friend who wants to go with you. Do the things that you enjoy. So go outside, walk around, take nature hikes. And the things that Angela said, like, massage therapy. Even some men like to do yoga.
Right.
So whatever helps minimize stress or decrease stress, or don't even some people drink like some wine or something every now and then. That's fine. But I'm saying if you have depression and you're using more alcohol than normal, and
Yeah.
you're covering up how you feel with alcohol, it's going to make things worse, especially if you don't know your testosterone levels. Now, in our 20s and 30s, optimal levels for men. Now, when you get your report, you're going to see a reference range on these lab results. I can't stand reference ranges because I think those are statistical. Who normal? I don't know. They just statistical ranges, and even as low as 250, they say you're normal. That is BS. So, at age 25 to 35, your optimal could be 700 to
Wow.
1100 for men.
Woo.
And so when you're getting older, some men can drop to 100 and 200 and even 300 and not feel good. So
Right.
there are pellet therapy for men.
Mhm.
Testosterone pellets are available for men, bioidentical. You have androgel creams. I'm still studying the injections because I heard that they can be synthetic, but when they're entered into the body, they become bioidentical. I got to do a little bit more research about injections, but I am an advocate for the pellets, the creams, if you do not want the pellets. Sometimes we can, with the pellets, we can increase some testosterone levels up to 1500, 1800. And some men feel amazing, you know. But one criteria, testosterone can thicken blood. So if you have a high hematocrit over 50, we do not give you pellets. We ask you to go blood dump, go donate some blood, and things like that. Now, when I talked about testosterone can change into estrogen, even with pellets, we can give you a aromatase inhibitor to
Mhm,
block that testosterone from turning into estrogen. So if
mhm,
you're worried about that, we got you covered.
mhm.
So we have to kind of work with you individually, get your labs drawn, look at your risk factors, see what's actually going on with your health. Do you have insulin resistance? Is your SHBG low, meaning that it has a lot of free hormone release, loose in your bloodstream, or is it high and a lot of your hormone is bound? We have to find out why. Like, why my body keep binding my hormone, saying something's not safe for me to have this hormone right now. So we have to do a full evaluation to see what's actually going on with your body. We don't just give hormones because hormones got to attach to receptors on the cell for it to communicate effectively and work for the body. So if we get you to 1500 and you feel good, we can keep you at 1500. You can come every I think it's like 4 to 6 months for men. You don't have to come every 3 months like women. So
Yeah,
you come less for pellet therapy. I think now about 6 months for it might be if you exercise a whole lot, you might need it a little sooner.
mhm.
So like I said, it's an individual thing, but in some 1500 might be excessive for some men. So that's why I say a number is individualized. But if just because your reference range on your sheet say 250 and you're 350 and you think you're good,
Yeah,
get some stuff checked, especially if you're having symptoms that you
yeah.
still low testosterone. Because for men, it's 95% and it affects all tissues and organ in a male body. So women have a little less than men, less than men. But men, that's their dominant hormone, even though testosterone for women influences a lot of things, but we have a lot more estrogen and ours function a little different than men. So that's why it's very important to get it checked.
How do you I know for women, I tell women they need to find a provider who knows women's hormonal health. What type of, provider should men look for? Somebody who is knowledgeable in hormonal health. How do they find somebody like that?
I mean, you probably have to ask questions to because some PCPs are very knowledgeable. Some urologists,
Yeah.
are knowledgeable about testosterone and what's going on. So, but it has been my dad was telling me it's been a decline in urologists. So you
Yeah.
just kind of have to research. I work with Dr. Baker at Renew Infusion and Wellness. We're located in LaGrange, but I also do virtual consults. You can always get in contact with me, and Dr. Baker. So, and we can help you figure some things out. So that's the first step. Getting someone, I read lab work. So if you even have old lab work, I don't like labs that's like more than 3 months old. If you need somebody to read it to help you understand, as we get an in-depth evaluation, we can tell you what's going on. We can give you options for you, based on, your medical history. So I would say ask questions to your PCP, look for urologists and things such as that, some nurse practitioners like myself. PAs can be very knowledgeable about this part of life with andropause and menopause. So
Mhm.
I think you just have to research. And then a lot of people, even with the Menopause Society, a lot of females that have that certification are very well educated in men's health. So that's something that you can also look into as well. And there's several other certifications because Dr. DeRosa has a amazing certification for hormonal health. So it's not just the Menopause Society; it's some other certifications out there for that. So you look in different avenues for people who have the expertise in hormone health.
So when she was talking about the Menopause Society, for those of you listening, if you go to the show notes, there's a link to the Menopause Society where you can put in your zip code and find healthcare providers that have been trained in hormonal health care, like Latalia. So yeah, go to the show notes and you'll be able to click on that link. So as we're sitting here and we're talking about all of this, I think about how many people out there may be dealing with this right now, men and women, if they're listening and they just didn't even realize it. And now they're probably breathing a little sigh of relief that, oh my gosh, now I have a name for it. Now I realize that this is really a health condition that my partner may be going through. So hopefully, now that you've listened to this episode, it's given you the words to say. If you're a woman, it's giving you the words to say to the men in your life. If you're a man, it's giving you the words to say to the women in your life to explain some of the things that you've been feeling. And even with this episode, as much as we've talked about, we've only scratched the surface, but we wanted to make sure that everybody knew that andropause is a real thing and that it's not talked about enough. And men are not as encouraged to think about their hormones in midlife the way women are. And I think that's a shame, but hopefully now you're aware and you know that this is something that you could be going through. We want you to share this episode, let people know about it. Let's spread the word about andropause because yes, nowadays in 2026, women are talking more and more about menopause and we are sharing all over social media, but I'm not hearing much about andropause. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's all we have for today. This has been an amazing episode. I want you to please follow us on social media. The links are in the show notes. And the reason I want you to follow us on social media is because we've created some charts of information that have to do with this episode, all about andropause, that I think you'll find very helpful. And we post it on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube. So please go to those different social media outlets, look for our links in the show notes, and follow us on social media. Also, subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss any of the future episodes. Our future episodes, we're going to focus on, like our next episode is going to be all about sex. During menopausal transition, sex. We're going to talk about all about sex. So you don't want to miss that. So please subscribe to the podcast. And we are on YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts. And lastly, if you are interested in getting in contact with Latalia, like she said, she practices virtually. She can do virtual consults with you if you don't live in the Atlanta metropolitan area. If you do live in the Atlanta metropolitan area and you'd like to see her face to face, that's possible as well. But her contact information is also in the show notes. If you have any questions, any comments, please let us know. We read every comment. And if you want to contact the podcast, our email address is in the show notes as well. Until we see you next time, we hope you have a great day and you take care of yourself. Bye.
Bye. One last thing before you go
Oh,
that I did want to say. Also, with progesterone, and when I talked about progesterone, taking progesterone, it helps prevent the feminization from too much estrogen. So that's why I said men can take low doses of progesterone because it's powerful, it helps calm. But just to say it all together, get evaluated, get your labs drawn, just like Angela said. But I did want to add that last little piece so we can evaluate you and make you feel really, really good. Okay? Talk to you
sorry about
soon.
that, Natalia.
That's okay. That's fine.
Okay, now we're going to say goodbye until the next episode.
Goodbye.
Take care.